Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to get on here to talk a bit about the uploading schedule or the lack of an uploading schedule recently. If you follow me on my Read Aloud Podcast's Instagram page at Chantress Reads, you might have seen my post about it. All it boils down to is, even though I've been trying to give myself a break to do like 1 week off from the podcast and 1 week off from the YouTube channel, it still means that I am constantly filming and editing and recording throughout the entire week, and I have work on top of that. So going forward, I can't really promise when things will be uploaded. It's super unfair to you to be like, oh, I'm gonna upload every Sunday, like with the podcast, and then not have it happen. And it's also unfair, I think, to put that much pressure on myself when this is meant to be a hobby. I don't get paid to do this, so I shouldn't be putting myself through all that stress. So yeah, going forward, uploads will happen when they happen. I'm hoping that it won't be like 3 months of nothing, because there are things that I want to do. There are looks that I want to do, want to try. There are things I want to make. Hopefully I get my head on straight, manage my time better, and don't stress myself out. I'm really good at stressing myself out, so we'll see. But yeah, on with today's episode. Greetings, my lovable weirdos! This episode is more of a combination Tinker Tuesday and Transformation Thursday because this just took me way longer than I thought it would. So what am I making / transforming myself into today? Well, I'm going to attempt to make a corpse husband face prosthetic. Specifically, I'm going to be basing the prosthetic off this image. Now, full disclosure, at the time I'm filming this, I don't really know much about Corpse Husband. I know he is a Twitch streamer who plays Among Us with other famous streamers, and apparently his voice is really deep. I actually came to know about him because an artist I follow on Instagram, Still Indigo, posted some fan art, and I was like, I love the bunny skull face mask aesthetic. Recently, Lindy posted a comic which is part of an AU story she is collabing with Savanto on, and that Comfy Cartel comic is basically what inspired me to do this. So, blame her. Right, so to make this prosthetic you will need... I started by creating a pattern for the bunny ear. My first attempt was too thin, so I widened the base so that I could have these folds in it. Once I was happy with the pattern, I transferred it onto white craft foam. I then used my hair straightener to seal the foam and heat it up enough to mold it into the shape I wanted. Once I had the shape I wanted, I taped the ear onto my face cast and then used liquid latex and cotton wool to hold the base together. Here I'm trying to figure out the placement of these pink LEDs because I want the eye to light up like in the image I'm using for my reference. These are tiny LEDs that can be strapped to your finger, but I still thought it was too bulky, so I took apart the casing to just use the LED bulb with a button cell battery. Next, I used tin foil to create a slight dome over the eye that's going to glow. I then used a bit of a transparency sheet to heat form a makeshift lens over the tin foil. If you don't have a heat gun, you should be able to use a hairdryer for this. I didn't have gloves, so I used a pair of old socks to protect my hands. The next part is sculpting the face prosthetic. I used Super Sculpey because that's what I have, but you can use whatever modeling clay you have. Now, this sculpt took me forever, basically because this was the first time I'd ever sculpted anything this large with this kind of detail out of clay. My advice as a first-time sculptor would be, don't try to recreate the features. Instead, look for shapes. Like, the chin is a triangle, and the brow bone is a tiny sausage. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what helped me. Once I had the basic shape down on my face form, I went back in with my clay loops to carve out the details. I also made myself some clay loops with bits of guitar string because I didn't have clay loops. I actually ended up using this tool a lot. I decided to use foam clay for the teeth so that I could glue them onto my prosthetic later. I thought they would look more substantial this way than if they were just made out of latex. When I was happy with the sculpt, I covered the entire thing in a thin base layer of liquid latex. I actually laid down 2 layers of just latex before adding strips of tissue paper as well. Make sure the layers dry before you start adding the next one. I ended up with 3 layers of tissue and liquid latex. I then left the prosthetic to completely dry overnight. If you notice parts where the tissue didn't set properly, just go back in with some latex. Once the prosthetic is dry, powder the entire thing down with baby powder. I decided to do the paint job, or rather the makeup job, before lifting the prosthetic from the clay sculpt because I thought it would be easier that way. I used the purple from my Bruise palette for the base color. After covering the entire face and ear with a coat of the purple grease paint, I then went back in with a tiny stipple brush to even out the color. I then used the maroon and black from my Cuts and Wounds palette to add definition to the features. Once I was done, I set everything with more baby powder. Here I'm using eyeshadow to enhance the colors, but I should really have done this after lifting the prosthetic because the powder from the lifting process would just dull the colors again. I attached the teeth with super glue. Here you can see how foam clay can shrink once it's dry. I used some water to attach more foam clay to the existing teeth to fill in the gaps. I used more eyeshadow to color the teeth and then sealed them with clear nail polish. To lift the prosthetic, I picked at the edge of the prosthetic until I had a tiny gap between it and my face form, where I could use a tiny brush and baby powder to slowly remove it. This is a process that takes patience. The baby powder prevents the latex from sticking to itself. Go slowly, especially around the detailed areas so that you don't end up ripping all your hard work. Once I got to the ear, I brushed off the remaining powder from my clay sculpt so that I could actually remove the entire thing from my face form to lift the ear. I then trimmed the edges and cut out ear holes and the eye. I tested the prosthetic by holding it up to my face and decided to add cotton wool to the bits I had bulked up in the sculpt. And then it was time to glue the entire thing onto my face. Here I'm covering my eye with cotton so that I don't blind myself with the LEDs. My initial plan to attach the LEDs was a really bad idea. So here, I'm sticking the makeshift lens, the LEDs, and even more cotton onto the prosthetic itself. And that's the look! I realized that this prosthetic is really only meant to be viewed from the front. Any other angle looks kinda weird. I hope you enjoyed the video and don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe. If there's something you think I can improve on, please let me know in the comments below. And until next time, keep on embracing your inner weirdo. Bye!